He is the author of the new book, Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind. He's the director of Exopolitics Hong Kong, and we're being joined this morning by Neil Gould. Again, thanks very much for coming on the show. I have to say that the past few days here, as I've tried to do some research and get myself organized to do this, I have been overwhelmed by the amount of information that I started bouncing around. You sent me a bunch of YouTube links and other things, and I've just got pages and pages of handwritten notes here. So if anything ends up being a little disjointed, forgive me. I'm trying to organize it into a somewhat sensible, kind of script to follow here. This is a great opportunity. Stephen Bassett gave me your contact information, and I'd like to just go ahead and start in the exopolitics arena, if I could, and get you to talk a little bit about the Exopolitics Institute and, in particular, Exopolitics Hong Kong.
Okay, well, I'm actually the founder of Exopolitics Hong Kong and a director of the Exopolitics Institute, founded by Dr. Sala. Exopolitics Hong Kong, I set up some years back to try to bring exopolitical awareness to Hong Kong, and of course to let it sort of leak out into Asia. I found when I got here that people were extremely limited in their understanding or the exposure to what was going on exopolitically, and I find it was the language barrier was the main point. There was so little literature that had been translated. So I got involved in translating a book and what have you. What else we do here? We do lectures from time to time, we do events. We did the Jim Sparks conference out here.
Yes.
Jim Sparks. And we are going to be doing in the next month the very first ever, let's call it a Skype, not a Skype, let's call it an international video conference. So one Friday every month, we will have a guest. For example, Stephen Bassett's one of the guests, Paula Harris, Michael Sala, and we will allow them to do a half-hour presentation to our Chinese audience, after which the audience will be given a chance to interact and ask questions, which is something never been done here before.
How about that? That's great.
Yes, that'll be great. And as far as the Exopolitics Institute is concerned, which was part of your question, I actually embarked on the Exopolitics Institute certification program some years back. Obviously, being an experiencer myself, I really needed to know more about what happened to me. And it was one of the best things that I ever did was to join the program. I was taught by Paul Harris, I was taught by Manuel Lameroy, and by Dr. Sal himself. And really, the research and the work that we did truly broadened my horizons, and I really got involved in the field, made films, as you know, and written a book. And finally, Dr. Sala honored me by inviting me to the board of directors, for which I've been eternally grateful and never looked back. So the Exopolitics Institute really is a group of let's say, enlightened people. It's a kind of a think tank, and we share views on a forum. We do events. We have strategies. We have the Exo News Service, where we host articles. We give latest breaking news, videos. So our function isn't over yet. We're still growing in many different avenues to bring disclosure to the world.
Absolutely. A couple of years ago, I had the chance to meet and interview Dr. Sala. I've also met and interviewed Paula Harris, and am very familiar with the Institute. I'm a bit floored by your description of this conference, though. I didn't know anything about that. And are you saying that the, if you will, the general public will have some sort of access to this?
No, we might one day move on to a Ustream sort of version of that.
I see.
This is primarily to help the Chinese.
Yes. Wow. That is a fantastic thing. So I'll definitely insist that I have the chance to get some information about that, and we'll put the word out there in more detail for the listeners of our show. Yes, the institute is a fascinating topic, and my understanding of it, it functions a little bit like almost a university at this point, because when you say certification, you've actually earned what they call a diploma.
Correct.
In exopolitics, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Yes, and what else can you tell me about the institute itself, as far as the types of courses and the types of material that people would encounter in pursuit of one of these diplomas?
Well, we do, for example, galactic diplomacy.
Yes.
Which covers a very wide spectrum of of all matters to do with extraterrestrial life. I mean, from exophenocytes, topologies, it's like a form of exobiology, if you like, descriptions of the beings, perhaps their political imperatives, the way they try to maybe help us, maybe manipulate us, maybe intrude on us,
right,
and of course mentor us. These are very, very important issues. And when you read and study this material, and later on find other material that Dr. Sala introduces, where you have scientists and professors from perhaps way back who have had these experiences themselves, and they expand on their experiences and put them into text. And this is extremely beneficial for the student, because, I mean, so many of us have had things happen and we don't have any perspective. We don't have anything to measure it by. And here in this course, it's absolutely fantastic. It's exactly what happens. You can suddenly relate. You can relate your experiences to what you've read and what you've studied. And we have open forums in some of the classes, and we talk online, and the lectures are done online, and that's really, really, really helpful. Other courses we do are just on exopolitics, the history of exopolitics, exopolitical issues. We do a course on Paola Harris does a course called Best Evidence, which brings all the people she's met and interviewed in the past. She also does a course on Hollywood, where you can see how Hollywood influences our lives and how the CIA have used it, and how, disclosure of Hollywood. It's really too much to go into in one interview.
It really is, sure.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, you do these courses, you come out, you're in another world. You have a complete different understanding of everything.
Right. Yeah, I look forward to the chance to talk to Paola Harris again. I attended X Conference 2009. And saw her presentation on Hollywood. And, I have to say that, and Dr. Sala is another great example. This is now a field, and I commented on this in an email to you. This is now a field that, as I said, I think has really turned a corner because of the amazing number of credentials that some of these people are bringing to the table at this point. This is not for the faint of heart. These are PhDs, in some case multiple PhDs, who are bringing their expertise, multidisciplinary expertise, to these fields of study. And you can see the influence that it's started to have really around the world, not only in the United States, but across Europe, and now, as you say, in Asia, and your comment earlier was fascinating, where you're saying that the lack of literature and the lack of material has been kind of a hindrance in this region. Can you expand on that a little bit? That was a very interesting remark.
Well, that's the whole point, is by forming the institute. I mean, we've got the best brains in the business together under one forum, and this information gets chewed and crunched over by many of us, and then released in articles, as I say, also released in the Exopolitics certification program. But you're right. It's also, given people, it's led a lot of those whistleblowers, the people who chose to keep quiet, who were scared, they had nobody to relate to. I keep coming back to that. And now we have the institute. Now we have one whistleblower stands up, another one stands up, then another. Paola Harris has got hold of most of these people. She's made transcripts of the interview. She's written 3 books. If you read her books, you'll find all the whistleblowers in there. And These guys are really guys that are right in the heart and soul of the ET issue. I mean, Paola was very, very close to Dr. Michael Wolff, very, very, very close to Dr. Alan Hynek, very, very close to Phil Corso, and many, many other people. And quite frankly, Paola's extracted all this information and put it into the public domain. So, of course, when you get other scientists, other people in these corporations and parts of the military-industrial complex with secret clearances, etc. Well, they now have a willingness, perhaps a conscience. I mean, this is very important to take into consideration. They have children. They have a conscience that they've been hiding something that's far too important to hide and will impact the future. So they come out and they write articles and they release information. And, one thing on top of the other, if you look back 5 years from now, you didn't have even, 10% of what's out there now. And so it comes more and more and more. And we're slowly starting to put together a picture of exactly what galactic politics are, galactic diplomacy is, and what are the imperatives and the political motivations of some of these groups. It is actually coming out. And it's, there are still people, of course, who can't even accept it, who can't listen to it.
Yes.
But you just look at Facebook today, it is just going bananas. The message is being spread left, right, and center. Unfortunately, you've got a lot of new pages and people who are misled or people who follow blindly and, put out a lot of bunkum out there. But the whole point is that if you do the research, you do the education, you embark on this program, you will know what to filter. You'll discern the truth.
Absolutely. You're making some excellent points. And I just want to stress again, and I've said this in a couple of different interviews, you're exactly right. Paula Harris has done some amazing work and really, drilled down to where the facts actually lie with some of the biggest names that have come through the field over the past several decades, really. And she's just a great example of the kind of resources and information you're talking about. Let me back up a little bit and tell your story, or rather get you to tell your story, kind of back from the beginning. And I'm going to just occasionally be dropping in here. You're listening to Time and Space. I'm your host, Mike Smith. I'm coming to you this morning from Taipei in Taiwan, and my guest is Neil Gould, who's coming from Hong Kong on a beautiful Sunday morning, I must say, September 11th, the 10th anniversary of that terrible day. Neil, if I could, let me get you to tell your story back from, I guess, starting from when you were just a kid, about 9 years old. And the one thing I'll lead off with in asking you to describe this for us is a remark that I saw in one of your interviews where you said that when you had this first experience, you should have been terrified and were not. So if you would, please explain as a young boy in South Africa what it was that you experienced and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it's basically what happened to me has happened to many, many other people. I just kept this locked away in my mind for years, not just like a picture on the wall. It never came off. It just hung there. But I'll tell you when it all came off the wall a little bit later. At about 9 years old, I was always terrified of the dark. My parents had terrible trouble with me. They used to have to open and close the cupboard doors before I went to bed. We had to look under the bed, make sure nothing was there. I had to draw pictures of what I was afraid of for my head and so on. And one night I went to bed and suddenly, early hours of the morning, I woke up. I know I was awake. I was in South Africa. It was bush, surrounded by bush. There were no overhead cables to disturb my brain. There were no power stations, junction boxes, nothing. And I was wide awake. And to the right-hand side of me was a being in robes. It was about 4.5 feet. And I sort of looked up, and the being sort of looked down at me, didn't move, leaned against the wall. And as I say, normally I'd be terrified. I would have jumped out of my skin.
And you're saying that this being just materialized out of thin air? It just was 1 second it wasn't there, and the next it was?
Well, I actually woke up, and the being was there. It obviously woke me up. And it's the hue, the color of the room changed to a slight blue hue. And the being was interacting with me in a way that is very difficult to describe because there was no words, not talking, but I still maintain, and I've spoken to Mary Rodwell. I think you might have heard of Mary Rodwell.
Yes. Well, I was going to bring up a bunch of these things later.